come together to say that the time is now to rebuild a more resilient NYCHA. My name is Moe George, and I'm with Community versus Herd, and a former resident of Edenwald houses in the Bronx. I'm here today standing with brothers from affected Sandy zones because 16 months after Sandy, many of the issues that were front and center for NYCHA residents before the storm got worse post-Sandy and remain challenges today. Residents in hard-hit areas still face serious problems and relate to the storm, such as persistent mold, ongoing repair needs, and high unemployment. These problems are exacerbated by Sandy, but they are not new. Policy changes and disinvestment over the last decade, starting with the federal government, has caused NYCHA residents to live in an ongoing state of neglect. But today, we are here to say it is a new day. And public housing residents have solutions. We are here to present our recommendation in a new report, Weathering the Storm, Rebuilding a More Resilient New York City Housing Authority post-Sandy. We are here to say that we want to work with NYCHA and the new administration to change the lives of NYCHA residents and make NYCHA buildings stronger for the long term, so we can withstand future storms and we can preserve this critical affordable housing stock in our city. A lot can and should be done. We need leadership and real commitment from our elected officials to make this happen. Thankfully, we have a number of great partners in the City Council now, standing with us as we release this report. Since they have an emergency meeting, they are being called to, we'll let them go first. That's usually not the CBH style. Councilmember Richie Torres from the Bronx and the new chair of the Public Housing Committee.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here. I'm Richie Torres. I represent the Central Bronx, and I'm the chair of the Committee on Public Housing. And I want to thank CBH for issuing this report on the conditions of public housing in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy. And I can tell you that the conditions that are described in this report, I have lived in my own life and I have seen with my own eyes. I grew up and I was born in public housing in the Bronx. My mother continues to live in public housing and continues to struggle with the growth of mold in her own apartment. And I held my first ever public housing hearing in a public housing development where we have thousands of residents living without permanent boilers. So I know this is the time where we're talking about inequality, but nowhere is inequality lived more painfully than in public housing, where tenants have to live with mold in their apartments and without boilers in their buildings. And that is unacceptable. And I'm assuring you that we will have a new age of accountability for the New York City Housing Authority, and I will look to Carlos Menchaca, Mark Trager, and CBH as a partner in holding the New York City Housing Authority accountable. So I thank you, and you can count on me to be an advocate. Thank you so much.
Next we have Councilmember Mark Trager from Coney Island and chair of the Recovery and Resilience Committee.
Thank you, and thank you to CBH. Thank you for members of labor and community organizations that are here, my colleagues, Richie Torres, Carlos Menchaca, and others. My first week in office, the first snowstorm, which seems like there were many, O'Dwyer houses in Coney Island, their temporary boiler broke down, leaving hundreds of families with no heat and no hot water, some for over 2 or 3 days. And my staff and I knocked on those doors to offer folks to go to a warming center nearby. And the sights that I saw, I will never forget for the rest of my life. Senior citizens wrapping themselves with blankets, using their ovens as sources of heat, screaming and crying that they're cold and they can't shower for days. They see little children crying, cold, sweaters. I will never forget those images, ever. And that is why our first hearing of the Recovery Committee was a joint hearing with Chairman Richie Torres of Public Housing. And my message to Coney Islanders was, we don't have to go to City Hall to be heard. City Hall's coming to you to hear from you directly. And I wanted them to explain and to say to people in power, what they're living through on a day-to-day basis, where most of our buildings are running on temporary boilers that are breaking down whenever the temperatures drop below 40 degrees. Many cases of mold infestation. Many cases where there's raw sewage backups in our building. We're still dealing with the aftermath 16 months later. And we are demanding from NYCHA a plan. They have received monies from the federal government. They also are supposed to receive money from their insurance companies. One of the things that came out of the hearing was that NYCHA received only $187 million out of $440 million in insurance monies that could fix all the temporary boilers from Coney Island to Red Hook to beyond, and their generators. But they have not received that money yet. So I stand before you as an active, engaged council member that will continue to partner with my colleagues in the council, with CVH, with other members of labor and organizations to demand that these families have humane conditions. These are people, they're human beings. They deserve to have heat and hot water. They deserve to have apartments free of mold. They deserve to have infrastructure that is resilient, that meets the challenges of the 21st century. That is my commitment, and I am so proud of the report that was issued. The council should take up this report. We should follow through on many of these important recommendations because it's the lives at stake. The people that I saw that night, I will be fighting for them, and I will never forget that. Thank you very much.
Action! Next we have Council Member Carlos Menchaca from Red Hook.
Buenos dias, everyone. Good morning. My name is Carlos Menchaca, and I represent the 38th District, which includes Sunset Park and Red Hook that was devastated by Sandy. I want to be thankful, first, to all of you who are here today. We really have to stop meeting like this. What we need to do is get into that building right there, into the mayor's office, and have direct conversations with the mayor's office, with NYCHA, the city council, and all of you that have done such an incredible job of pulling this information together to make sure that we see what we've already seen for so long, which is an inaction on a NYCHA property that has been affected by Sandy. We knew these problems were there for such a long time, and that's why we're here today, to make sure that the world knows that we now have data. And data is going to be incredibly important. Just this morning, I woke up to text about the 135 Richards and 80 Dwight not having hot water or heat. This is a temporary boiler that continues to fail Red Hook. This is not the same story. This is a story that has, that's not just in Red Hook, it's in Coney Island, it's in the Rockaways. This has to stop. There are billions of dollars right now that are sitting doing nothing. We're here because we want action. We are here because we want action, and we want it now. So this needs to stop, and we need to make sure that our voices are collected around a table where we have constructive conversations about how we move this forward. I'm here with Councilmember Trager and Councilmember Torres to make sure that that happens from the City Council. We have created our own committee to do resiliency and recovery oversight. Thank you so much for being out here today, and we're going to make sure that next time we meet around a table to have a constructive conversation about how we're going to move this forward. Thank you.
And due to a meeting, there are a couple of council members that are supportive who are not able to be with us, but we do want to recognize them. Councilmember Steve Levin from Brooklyn, Councilwoman Margaret Chin from Lower Manhattan, Councilwoman Rosie Mendez, and Councilwoman Helen Rosenthal. We want to give all of them all of applause for their support, and they couldn't be here today. And we're also excited to say that we also have the support of Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, who hails from East Harlem, where CVH office is, and we had this recent explosion, and also has the highest concentration of public housing in the city. Next, I want to introduce a member leader of Community Voices Heard.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Eugene Woody. I'm a member leader of Community Voices Heard, and I'm also a resident of Douglas Houses. And we want to thank all of the council members for coming out and showing us support, as we will show them support as we work with them. Representatives from our groups had a meeting yesterday with the top people at NYCHA and a representative from the mayor's office. and we feel positive that they are ready to work with us and to address the long-standing problems that NYCHA has faced. We appreciate that they too recognize that it's time for a new set of priorities in the city. NYCHA has begun making some progress, and they're ready to make more, and to work with community groups like us. So today, I want to recognize all the community groups that are here today. Is Community Voices Heard in the house? Woo! All right. Is Faith in NY in the house? Yeah! All right. Is FUREE in the house? Yeah! Is good old Lower East Side in the house? Yeah! Is New York Communities for Change in the house? Yeah! Is the Red Hook Initiative in the house? Yeah! And then even if you're not a part of that community organization, you can still clap because we're here standing together. So let's go support. There we go. Is Communities Development Project of the Urban Justice Center in the house today? Is Align in the house? And last but not least, the Alliance for a Just Rebuilding, which is many of the groups today that you see standing here. All right. We'd like to also recognize the allies who stand with us, both here today and those that could not make it, but are avid supporters of what it is we're doing. So we want to recognize District Council 37. We want to recognize the Teamsters Local 23-7. We want to recognize the laborers and the others that could not be here today. And to let you know more about our report and findings and recommendations, I'd like to invite ELISA Kasdan from the Community Development Project and Urban Justice Center, who is the main author of the report.
Good morning, everyone. My name is ELISA Kasdan. I'm the Director of Research and Policy at the Community Development Project of the Urban Justice Center. And I want to thank everyone that's here and the council members that gave their remarks. These groups that are here today came together a year after the storm to assess how people that were in Sandy impacted zones living in NYCHA were faring. They collected almost 600 surveys in 5 neighborhoods, including Coney Island, the Lower East Side, Far Rockaway, Red Hook, and Gowanus. We also conducted interviews and extensive background research. I'm going to share some of our data from our report, which is right here, but there's a lot more in there, so please take a look. We came up with a set of findings based on the surveys. The first is that a weak government response and poor communication with NYCHA residents created a gap that community groups ended up filling. The second finding is that NYCHA apartments, buildings, and grounds are desperately in need of repairs. Sandy exacerbated existing repair needs in NYCHA, many of which were already outstanding. So some of the data that shows this, 55% of survey respondents had repair needs in their apartments before Sandy, 40% have new repair needs as a result of the storm. 62% said that they were told they would have to wait 6 months or more when they put in an order for a repair. The third finding is that mold, which was a serious problem for NYCHA residents prior to the storm, has gotten worse since the storm and is impacting the health of residents. Based on our survey, 34% of survey respondents had visible mold before the storm, and 45% had mold in their apartment after Sandy. 56% of the respondents said that this mold was impacting their health. Finally, the fourth finding is that people in NYCHA need jobs. Although Sandy provided opportunities for employment and training for residents, NYCHA did not take full advantage of this opportunity. 64% of those surveyed were not currently working, and 84% had not heard of a job opportunity through NYCHA. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks again, Alexa. And our report also details proactive and effective solutions developed by those who witness NYCHA's problems on a daily basis. We believe with an estimated $3.2 billion in federal dollars comes to New York City for relief and resiliency efforts, including $308 million for NYCHA. And with this, a new administration, now is the time to implement these solutions. So I want to engage my brothers and sisters again. So can I ask her, is it now is the time? Is it time for a new and resilient NYCHA? Yes! Is it time for a new and resilient NYCHA? Yes! One more time. Is it time for a new and resilient NYCHA? Yes! That's what I like to hear. So I'd like to invite today's speakers to join me here present for our recommendations. And we will hear testimony from public housing residents in communities in Coney Island, Red Hook, Far Rockaway, the Lower East Side, and Gowanus. And it will give life to the problems and exemplify why we need a strong NYCHA and why we need to implement these solutions now. So again, you can find all of these details about our recommendations in our report. So recommendation number 1, greater communication and coordination with residents and community-based organizations. And to tell us why we need this, I'd like to introduce Carrie Jackson from Gowanus and FUREE. Carrie? Thank you, Carrie.
All right. Good morning. My name is Carrie Jackson. I'm Sergeant of Arms at Gowanus Houses Tenant Association and a member of FUREE, Families United for Racial and Economic Equality.
Speak up a little bit.
I'm louder. Okay, I'm louder. Okay. FUREE is a member-led, Brooklyn-based, multiracial organization made up mostly of women of color that organize to win housing, jobs, service for low-income and working families. I live in a Sandy-infected building at Gowanus Houses and had no electricity, no water, and no elevators for a day. But there were others who were out of heat, hot water, and electricity for nearly 2 weeks after the storm, and we heard very little from NYCHA about what was going on. Many of us walked up 14 floors to the apartments. Others, especially the elderly and disabled, could not get out for food or medicine in the dark. The Friday after the storm, FUREE came and coordinated relief efforts for the 5 buildings that were still out of heat, hot water, and electricity out of the closed community center. They brought in hundreds of volunteers, donations of food, medicine, and warm clothing for residents in the impacted building for 11 straight days. Volunteers brought up supplies, medicine, and food to residents, especially the elderly and the differently disabled, 3 times a day. Post-Sandy work has been difficult for all of us. What made it more difficult was the lack of communication from NYCHA. We stand here today calling for greater communication, coordination with the residents and community-based organizations. Thank you.
Once again, thank you again, Ms. Carrie Jackson. I appreciate it. All right, recommendation number 2. Tackle the long-term mold crisis and address the health and safety of residents. I would like to invite Pastor Duane Sleep from the First Baptist Church of Far Rockaway and the leader of Faith in NY. Duane?
Good morning. The residents of the housing, especially in Far Rockaway, were already hard hit and pressed with mold and other issues that were a part of their housing. And when Sandy came, it further decimated and desecrated the homes of many, many public housing residents who are members of the congregations of Far Rockaway. And nothing was done. There were promises made to us that there would be some conversation with our new mayor. And since he's been there, there have been no conversations. And we are still living in the aftermath of Sandy. Many of the residents of public housing are still living with many, many issues that are hindering them, especially with their health. There are seniors, there are poor people who come to our churches looking for relief in our soup kitchens, and yet they cannot find adequate housing. And we are calling on NYCHA to do what it needs to do to return these housing places to a place where people can reside in peace and harmony and live with decency and respect. We all know that there are a lot of poor people and underserved people and underprivileged people who live in Far Rockaway, and it seems as if their voices are not being heard. So the pastors and the leaders and the community leaders of our community are saying it's got to stop now. We need some action, and we need action right away. Our homes are languishing, and we're calling on our mayor to keep his promise to us. Come to us and help us at this time, because if we don't have help, our people will be further hindered. So we are here today to stand with these other groups to say we will not allow this treatment any longer, and we will stand firm and asking for reparations, and that our places where we live will be very good places to live. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Pastor Duane Sleep. Recommendation number 3, increase transparency and accountability measures to improve and expedite the repair process. To tell us more about the needs for repairs, Carmen Negro from the good old Lower East Side.
All right,
Carmen?
What do we want? When do we want it? Now! Good morning. My name is Carmen Negro, and I am a resident of Baruch Houses and a member of Good Old Lower East Side, a community-based organization that works to promote and preserve affordable housing in the Lower East Side. Before Hurricane Sandy hit, our development was already in desperate need of repairs. Many residents have had issues with mold, feeling pain, deteriorating cabinets, non-working elevators, broken fixtures, and entrance doors. It was a very traumatizing experience when Hurricane Sandy hit. The residents of Baruch Houses were severely impacted. I clearly remember watching the water get higher than seeing cars flowing on the Lansing Street. When the Con Edison plant exploded, the Lower East Side was left in the dark, and many elderly and disabled residents were trapped in their homes without power and water for days. Thankfully, there were backup generators in some of the community centers, and also assistance from local community organizations like GOLES. After the storm, many residents were concerned about the stability of the buildings as well as sinkholes created by the storm on the development grounds. It seemed like everything was falling apart, and NYCHA was not responding quick enough to make the repairs. Nearby, developments like Smith Houses were forced to file a 300-plus lawsuit to get the repairs done. We urge NYCHA to develop a more accountable system to address NYCHA repairs. We deserve the right to preserve decent housing now and for future generations to come.
Carmen Negro, thank you again. We'd like to acknowledge the support we've been getting from some of our allies. So we'd like to acknowledge Senator Montgomery, who was here. We'd like and we'd like to acknowledge Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. So thank you for the support. And one of our allies actually has to go, so we want to kind of move them ahead. It's a member from DC 37. It's another important voice that represents the workers at NYCHA, and we're proud to count on their support as we work together to make NYCHA stronger. So we'd like to invite Barbara Ingram Edmonds from DC 37.
Good morning, and thank you so much for all of you being here. On District Council 37, on Lillian Roberts' behalf, our Executive Director, I want to thank the Urban Justice Center, Align, and Community Voices Heard, and all of our faith community allies, and of course our representatives from our union and our leadership. District Council 37 represents over 15,000 residents of those developments, whether they be from Seward Park to Gowanus to Coney Island and throughout the 5 boroughs. So we know, as both community residents and workers, we also represent nearly 3,000 workers who are on the front line every day trying to make sure that the services that are so critical to those who deserve the best in our city, affordable housing, are met. So we are very happy to be here to see this report being released. We support it, and I want to echo again that this is a new day, that we will continue to work with all of the allies and the labor unions, and that we will also work with the new leadership, because we feel that with the de Blasio administration, and most importantly, a new leadership, a new chairwoman at the New York City Housing Authority, that hears and will listen to our concerns, we can make sure that this is a new day, that there will never be a situation like we had with the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, where folks do not have the situations where they have heat, where they have hot water, where they have access to electricity, where they don't have the mold, where they have adequate and fair and decent living conditions. So we stand with you today. We thank you all for being here, and we say it's a new day. New day. New day. New day. New day. Thank you so much, and God bless.
That was Miss Barbara Ingram Edmonds from DC 37. So thank you very much. And another ally of ours, we can never have too much support. So we'd like to thank Councilmember Debi Rose of Staten Island for showing her support today. So can we give her a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. All right, jumping right back into it. Recommendation number 4, create a resilient infrastructure for NYCHA. And I would like to introduce ELISA Pizarro from Red Hook and Red Hook Initiative.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lisa. On October 29, 2012, Hurricane Sandy hit the Red Hook community, and as the result, the basement of the Red Hook houses were flooded with water, damaging the boilers and electrical wiring. Residents were without electricity, water, and heat for 3 weeks, and received very little information on NYCHA recovery work. The Red Hook Initiative quickly organized recovery efforts and supported public housing residents throughout this difficult period with hot meals, supplies, recovery information, and communication. With the effort of other local organizations and hundreds of volunteers, we were able to keep all of our community members safe and secure. Moving forward, we hope NYCHA will join us in being prepared for other challenging events sure to come to our community. A year and a half later, many buildings are still hooked up to temporary boilers. This is an issue for residents as the temporary boilers break down often, leaving residents without heat or hot water for days. The temporary boilers would not be resilient in another storm, leaving residents anxious for safe and stable solutions. NYCHA is paying millions of dollars to rent and maintain these boilers. Money we believe could be spent more responsibly. We also heard at the recent City Council hearing that insurance companies, federal government are creating further delays, and we appreciate your work to solve these issues and find more efficient and stable and resilient solutions. The wait time for repairs also has been a big problem in Red Hook houses. Before, after, and storm, the residents are angry. Personally, in my apartment, I was without a kitchen to cook for my family for 4 months. The only reason the kitchen had to be completely redone was because the year it took for NYCHA to initially fix a leak under my sink. The wait time sometimes is months or sometimes years, inexcusable. Residents should not have to wait so long for repairs. A better system should be created, and we are eager to help put it in place. Thank you.
Thank you again, Elisa. And recommendation number 5, increase high-quality job opportunities and economic resiliency in NYCHA for residents and workers. And to represent that, Bernal Robinson from Community Voices Heard. Bernal.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you. Thank all of you for coming out to cover this, and more importantly, to hear our voices. Again, my name is Bernal Robinson. I'm a member leader of Community Voices Heard and a 3-decade resident of Carlton Manor, Far Rockaway, New York. I have seen the good of public housing, I've seen the bad, and now I see the worst. You know, there has been lack of communication. Listen, I don't have to repeat what's been said. You all heard it. Please know it's true. I've seen it, like I said. There's a new regime now, and I pray that they hear us and work with us. There are residents in public housing that are so sick, more than just health-wise, but mentally tired. They're drained. I'm drained. I've been on these steps. I can't even count the times, repeating the same thing over and over again. People are living in deplorable conditions. They're so despondent. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want to do anything. They're giving up. Their lives are practically over because they don't see any hope. They don't see a ray of light anywhere. I pray again that this new regime does something better. There were no jobs in Rockaway before Sandy hit. There are no jobs now. There's a Section 3 program that NYCHA implemented that doesn't work.
Sure enough.
It does not work.
That's right.
They rely so heavily on their REASE program that they say despondent residents should go there, apply, go to the training and all of this, as opposed to working directly with the established resident council boards, the people on the ground who knows what's going on. Just last week in my development, there was almost a riot. Residents were aware of other people in other developments getting jobs, working. But there was no communication with us to let us know what to do, where to go, or anything. Where it shouldn't have been like that.
That ain't right.
Okay, the residents want jobs, and instead of being forced to work at a wet program, to whereas if they miss a day to go to a site to try to demand a job, and they get sanctioned for going to try to get a real job.
That ain't right.
It ain't right. It ain't right. The system is totally broken. It's broken. And it's time for it to be fixed. And together we can do it. We can do it. We're asking all of you who are standing here in alliance with us, please hear our voices. Know and understand that what's going on in public housing is real. I'm getting out the hole, but it took me a long time to do it because I had to fight for so long to get decent water. I didn't have water in my apartment to drink for weeks, and this is before Sandy hit. When Sandy hit, forget about it because it made it even worse. If the kids were to go play in the sprinkles, that meant we had no water in our apartments because the pressure was so low, it didn't come in the building. That's before Sandy, so you can imagine what's now going on. People want to work, but they're too busy trying to fix and go to court to have their repairs made. I have taken so many days off from work to go to court. I'm taking a day off here now so that you can hear me and understand. We want to work. We want help. And we're asking for your help. Again, please, understand what you've heard before me is real. It's real. Thank you.
What do we want? Action! 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 When do we want it? Now! Thank you!
Thank you, Bernal. Thank you. Thank you to all of the speakers. And if you don't hear that, you don't have ears. Simple as that. And we want to, once again, we want to thank council members Torres, Trager, Menchaca, Levin, Richards, Chen, and Mendez for supporting us. For all of those who were able to come out, thank you. For all those who were not able to come out, thank you. Your support is very needed and we appreciate it. So we'll continue to work with them and their colleagues and create more allies in the City Council to push for more equitable and just rebuilding of NYCHA. And in closing, while these are major challenges, we hope that the City of New York and NYCHA's new leadership will learn from the mistakes from the past administration and tackle those problems head on. We are encouraged by some of the progress that NYCHA has already taken and made in the last year. And by the recent meetings we had with NYCHA's top officials, where we presented recommendations and began our dialogue to move them forward, we look forward to working with NYCHA and other entities to make sure the federal government, FEMA, HUD, and the insurance agencies get Sandy recovery funds to NYCHA more quickly so that these major issues can be dealt with. So in conclusion, thank you again for coming out. I'd like to thank everybody that came and showed support today. And we need a new resilient NYCHA now. We need a new resilient NYCHA now. We need a new resilient NYCHA now. Thank you.
Thank you.